It's here at last, the Lexus GX, which is a bit like a Toyota LandCruiser Prado, only dressed in Prada. And not only will the Lexus likely beat the Toyota to Australia, but when it does arrive in June, it's not going to be packing some little 2.8 litre turbo diesel engine. Oh no, this one sports a 3.5 litre twin turbocharged V6. Now there are 3 models in the Australian lineup, but this one is probably my favourite, the Overtrail, which swaps some of the style stuff for a true off-road focus, which means Australian off-roaders will soon be spoilt for choice. But the big question is, should you be in the queue for this or the Prado? Let's go find out. The Lexus GX will arrive in Australia in 3 trim levels: the entry-level luxury, the off-road focused Overtrail, and the flagship sports luxury. And while the brand is yet to confirm official prices, we expect the range to kick off at around 115 grand, based largely on the SUV's USA pricing. Opening proceedings then is the luxury, which will arrive with 20-inch alloys, a huge 14-inch central multimedia screen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, a head-up display, a 10-speaker Panasonic stereo, 3-zone climate control, and a powered tailgate which is hinged at the top. The flagship grade then is the sports luxury, which rides on 22-inch alloys, scores a 21-speaker Mark Levinson stereo, includes a massage function for front seat riders, and rides on adaptive suspension. There's also a cool box in the center console and a digital rear-view mirror. The toughest model, though, sits between those 2 trim levels, with the Overtrail doing away with some of the niceties but dialing up the off-road credibility, with 18-inch wheels wrapped in thick Toyo all-terrain tyres. It also has electronic center and rear diff locks and scores a clever electronic kinetic dynamic suspension system, which automatically disconnects the front and rear sway bars for serious wheel articulation when off-roading. It also features a very cool multi-terrain monitor, which shows the driver exactly what's happening beneath the tyres via that 14-inch central screen. Oh, and all 3 share the same very good engine, but more on that in just a moment. Now there are a few very quick ways to tell that you're looking at an Overtrail rather than one of the other GX models, but the most obvious one I think is that it just looks bigger than the other cars. Now that's owing to these 18-inch alloys being wrapped in chunky all-terrain tyres, but also the roof rails are a little taller and it just gives the car a little bit more road presence and a little bit more size. There's also a unique grille treatment. The wing mirrors are covered in black, and if you come to the back here, you'll find, like all GXs now, the boot opens upwards rather than a side hinge, but I do love this hatch style rear windscreen, which means you can easily throw stuff into the back. Now this might be the most rugged example of the GX, but to be honest, it doesn't feel like it from the cabin. It feels posh and premium, really nice place to spend time. I'm digging all these screens, especially the big 14-inch one in the middle. It gets wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, there's wireless phone charging, you name it. And to be honest, sitting in here, it doesn't really feel like it should be able to do the things that it does off-road, and I think that's probably a really nice combination. Rugged off-road, but comfortable in the cabin. I think they've done a really good job here. The Lexus GX stretches just over 5 metres in length, just over 2.1 metres in width, and just over 1.9 metres in height. But let's start with the Overtrail, which rides on those Toyo all-terrain tyres and has a 10mm wider wheel track. There's also slight changes to the front and rear bumpers to improve ground clearance, and there's a silver panel designed to be removed and replaced with a winch or recovery hooks on the aftermarket. The Overtrail serves up 1,291 litres of luggage space behind the second row of seats, with that number swelling to 2,562 litres with the second row folded flat. The Luxury and Sports Luxury deliver 291 litres of room behind the third row, growing to 1,138 litres and 2,177 litres when you start lowering the seats. All models weigh in excess of 2.5 tonnes, and curiously, American spec cars are rated to tow a braked 4,000 kilograms, while Australian delivered vehicles are all rated at 3.5 tonnes. But I do harbour suspicions that that number could head north by the time the vehicle launches in June. Now the Overtrail is a 5-seat version of the Lexus GX, which means you swap that third row for a lot of boot space. And I mean, really, there is plenty of room back there. I'm 175 centimetres sitting behind my own driving position. As you can see, I've got plenty of knee room and plenty of headroom. There's also seat heating for backseat passengers, as well as twin USB connection points. But there's some other thoughtful practicality features at play here as well. The dash, you might have noticed, is in a straight line, and Lexus reckons it's supposed to act a bit like a spirit level. They've kept it so straight so you can tell when the car's tilting one way or the other. And on the bonnet, it looks like design flourishes. There's these kind of raised ridges on either side, but actually they have a practicality point as well. They're supposed to tell you exactly where the front tyres are at a glance, so you always know where you're putting your tyres. It's pretty clever and pretty cool. I have a lot of love for this engine, which will make the all-new Prado feel like it's pottering around in the last century. See, every GX is fitted with a 3.5 litre twin turbocharged petrol V6, generating a sizable 260 kilowatts and 650 newton meters. That power is fed through a 10-speed automatic and sent to all 4 wheels. But the bad news starts here. A big engine and a big car means big fuel use, right?
We were averaging around 15 litres per 100 kilometres on the combined cycle, and to be honest, we weren't really asking all that much from the big Lexus. In the USA, the GX is fitted with an 80 litre tank, so given the numbers, you would be good for an approximate 500 kilometre range on a full tank.
So we are now behind the wheel of the Overtrail, and I know that we're off-road now, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the on-road performance first, if you'll bear with me. So Lexus admit that this car actually doesn't have the same NVH levels as the more premium road-focused models. The idea being that some of the changes they made to make it more off-road capable make it just a little bit noisier, a little bit harsher on public roads. Which is surprising because I've got to say this has been very smooth and very quiet on the freeway on the way out here. So I really don't think you're going to notice too much in the way of harshness. And more importantly, this engine is an absolute peach. It's got plenty of power, plenty of torque, plenty of flat-footed acceleration, and it even makes a really nice noise when you really put the boot in, something I won't be doing here as we're in four-wheel drive low and about to do some off-roading. Again, we are in the Overtrail model, which is the most off-road focused model in the GX family, and also really something that Lexus hasn't offered in Australia, at least not in its current batch of cars. And there's all sorts of clever technology on board here. There's locking differentials, four-wheel drive high and four-wheel drive low, of course. But it's also got this very clever trick suspension, which allows you to uncouple the front and rear sway bar for more tire articulation, something that happens automatically when the car senses you need it, as it will do in just a moment. Now, you won't be able to see as much from inside the car, but I can tell you from outside, you can see the wheels doing a lot of work on this little off-road course here. So a couple of super cool things going on here. Now, this is an off-road course that Lexus actually built for this car, so you can be pretty confident that it's going to be able to do it. But it's still pretty challenging. You spend a lot of time with one wheel in the air. There's a lot of articulation on the rear tires. In fact, from outside the car, you can see the rear tires going through absolute hell, but it does it all really easily. So inside the cabin though, Lexus has got some really cool technology on offer as well, including this off-road camera, which is really cool. What it does is it captures the road ahead of you, remembers its position, and then superimposes your tires on that road as you drive over it, so you can always see exactly where your front tires are and where they need to be. It's pretty clever stuff, and it makes the whole off-roading experience a whole lot easier, even on this fairly, in fact, very rocky, rough stuff. Now, I know that Lexus probably isn't the first name in off-roading, at least not in Australia, but this GX feels very, very capable, and it gives some pretty good vibes about what to expect from the Toyota LandCruiser Prado as well. And in fact, I think that's where this gets the most interesting. Toyota owns the off-road space in Australia, Lexus doesn't. But I think this one will give the Prado a run for its money. So there's plenty of other cool tech in the cabin as well, including the multi-terrain selector, which allows you to go through things like mud and rock and sand, but also a crawl control, so you can control going down off-road as well. Now, speaking of going down off-road, we are in a 32-degree pit here that Lexus, or we're about to be, that Lexus has dug, which is of course straight down, and then a 32-degree climb on the way out. And I can tell you, you can see absolutely nothing over the bonnet when you're making your way out. But that's where this clever camera comes into play, because as I'm climbing this ridiculously steep hill, I can't see a thing, but the camera can see before I can see, and I know that the coast is clear. So it is actually technology that you would use off-roading. It's pretty cool. And finally, let's talk about towing for a moment, courtesy of that big 3.5 litre twin-turbo V6. Lexus in America is claiming a massive 4,000 kilogram towing capacity. Now in Australia, it's rated at 3.5 tonne, which is about standard, but there is a chance that 4,000 tonne towing capacity will come to Oz as well, which would be a really big standout feature for this car. Okay, so we've left the off-road section, and in fact we've left the Overtrail in our rearview mirror. This is the luxury. It will be the entry-level GX when this vehicle arrives in Australia around the middle of the year. Pricing expected to be somewhere between 110 and 115,000, based largely on what it costs in the USA. But the big news about this car, of course, is what's in front of me, the engine. This is not the 2.8 litre diesel that will appear in the Toyota LandCruiser Prado. It is instead a big 3.5 litre twin turbocharged V6, and it is fantastic. I know we are into an era of electrification and hybrids, etc., but I can tell you there is something quite fantastic about having all that torque, all that power under your right foot whenever you need it. And I'll give you a little example. Put your foot down, there's a slight delay, and then the big GX just kind of pounces forward. It even has quite a nice little engine note that fills the cabin as well. The other thing that kind of jumps out here is that there is a level of refinement that I really wasn't expecting in a car in this category, and that was also true of the Overtrail, which was surprisingly soft and comfortable and quiet on the freeway, but this one, of course, will be even more so. This one rides on 20-inch alloys. The top spec one rides on 22-inch alloys, so what that does for the ride and road noise remains to be seen, but this one feels pretty quiet, pretty comfortable, at least on American roads. Of course, we'll have to put it to the test on Australia's typically dodgy road surfaces to figure out exactly how it is there. One other small caveat before we get too carried away, I'm yet to encounter a single corner in this car, which seems to be pretty common in the States, lots of long straight roads. So how the big bus handles when you're going around tighter bends, you'll have to wait till we get it in Australia to figure out that part as well. But on first impressions, it really is an impressive bit of kit, this car. There is a lot to like about it. Although my personal preference is to lock it into sport mode, where everything just tightens up slightly. Doesn't turn it into a performance car by any stretch of the imagination, but it just adds a little bit of weight to the steering, takes out some of the waftiness, and makes you feel a little bit more in control of the car. Downsides, well, a big engine is almost certainly going to mean big fuel use. So in this one, we've been averaging around 18.5 miles per gallon, which translates to about 15 litres per 100. And to be honest, we haven't actually been putting it through that much stress. We've been driving it much the same as you would do in Australia on long flowing roads without too much heavy acceleration and no off-roading in these cars. So I think that's probably going to be pretty indicative of what you can expect back home. But I will say this, it feels light years ahead of these kind of vehicles that have come before it. Those kind of vehicles that straddle sort of off-road and on-road always end up feeling a little more rugged and a little less comfortable on the tarmac, but that is not the case here. It's very, very comfortable on the road and very, very capable off it.
Lexus in Australia is yet to fully detail our specification, but you can expect the GX to arrive with the brand's Lexus Safety System Plus 3.0, which includes things like AEB with pedestrian detection and junction assist, lane tracing assist, lane departure alert with active assistance, roadside monitoring, and intelligent headlights. Happily, the safety systems don't squawk at you when they think you've exceeded the limit. Instead, a little red warning comes up on the driver display, which is infinitely better. The GX will be covered by Lexus' 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty, but service pricing is yet to be confirmed by the brand.
So the Lexus GX kind of signals a new direction for the brand in Australia, where it's not exactly known for its off-road credibility, but I think this car will really change that. And I also think it's probably going to end up giving the Toyota LandCruiser Prado a run for its money. I can see those two being cross-shopped. So if this really is a Prado wearing Prada, well, that might be the one you prefer. Now make sure you check out the full review on carsguide.com.au where you can read my full review on this car and thousands of others. Whatever you're shopping for, we've tested it, so check it out.